Hi everyone, my name is Angel. Um, I woke up at midnight a few nights ago after a discussion with my husband. I'd had a few memories trigger, and I did a bit of processing around that, and I would like to share my story. When I was a teenager, I dated an older guy. One night, he went out clubbing with our friends. I'd stayed behind because I was underage. I went out drinking in my little hometown instead because they didn't always check IDs here. Uh, I'd gotten into a conversation with a nice, funny, much older guy that I'd met earlier that day. I lived in a youth house at the time, and the youth worker assigned to the house had introduced me to him as a friend of hers. So I was trying to be cool and talked about bikes and cars and other things that I really don't know anything about. At one point, I excused myself to go to the toilet. So I had my period, but I'd realized that I left my bag with my pads in it on the table, so I had to turn around and go back and get it. And he'd made some comment about knowing what that must mean, and I joked about how annoying it is to be a girl. When I got back to the table, he asked if I wanted to head back to the youth worker's house. He was staying with her, and he could show me some of his photos of his bikes. So I thought that that would be fine. It would fill in the last couple of hours until my boyfriend and friends got back from the clubs. So I said, sure. But when I got to my youth worker's house, she wasn't there. And he then told me that she and her son were staying somewhere else for the night, um, and led me into the back room where there was a massage table set up. He said he was going to go and get his photos. So I started to feel a bit funny around this time. I told myself that I would just look at the photos as agreed, and then I'd say goodnight. So the photos he showed me were of a biker gang, a whole bunch of photos of really intimidating looking men with tattoos, their bikes, their leathers. He started telling me about all his connections in this gang. Um, and as I flicked through the photos, he stood really uncomfortably close to me. So now at this point, I started getting quite panicked. Um, I was trying to think of something to say that wouldn't escalate the situation into something kind of nasty, while also getting out of there as quickly as possible. Um, so before I'd finished flicking through the photos, he put his hands on my shoulders and squeezed them, and he said, "You feel really tense. Did you know that I do massage? This is my massage table, so I'll give you a massage. Lie down on the table." Uh, and I was a bit stunned and in shock and panicked, and he then told me to take my shirt off and that it would be easier for him if I wasn't wearing a bra. Um, so as I lay there completely petrified and wondering how the fuck I was getting out of this, or where it might be going, he grabbed my hand with one of his and shoved it down my pants as he grabbed my breast with his other hand. I went into shock and started shaking uncontrollably. And he then said, "It's amazing, isn't it? I feel it too," as he continued to massage my breasts. Luckily, just then my phone rang, and it was enough to snap me straight out of it. I sat up, I answered it straight away. It was my friend who'd gone to the clubs with my boyfriend, asking me something about my boyfriend. But I just talked over the top of him and I said, "Yeah, I'm at our youth worker's house. I'm with her friend. Sure, I can come home straight away. I'll see you in a minute." And he then said something about he wasn't coming home. And I just ignored that and repeated, "Okay, cool, I'll see you really soon." And I turned to get my stuff and leave. The guy then asked if I could stay a minute more so that he could finish himself off. I just said, "Oh, look, my friend is expecting me now and I really need to go." He said, "Okay, well, I'll walk you home. You never know who's out there, it might not be safe." And so I had to walk home with this guy, not knowing what would happen on the way home, if he wanted to finish himself off, what might happen when we get to my house, and that if he saw that there was no one actually waiting for me there. Um, so I walked really quickly, trying to keep to well lit areas. I stopped short of my house and just turned and said, "Oh, this is me, thanks, bye." And then he came in really close and gave me a really long hug and said, "Thanks heaps for tonight. It was really special. I feel a really strong, special connection with you." I smiled as best that I could, and I nodded, and I scuttled into the house, locking every door behind me before I curled up in a fetal position and cried until morning. Uh, my boyfriend came through the door in the early morning and asked what was the matter with me. And when I told him what had happened, he became enraged at me. He said, "You let another man touch your tits? That's fucking disgusting. I can't even look at you." And he stormed out, he slammed the door, and he sped away in his car. I I've just felt so ashamed and dirty and alone. Like a complete fuck up. I was really angry at myself for letting that happen. I was scared that I'd ruined my relationship. I felt completely worthless. When when my boyfriend returned later that day, he told me to promise that I would never let another man other than him touch me like that. It didn't even occur to me that I hadn't let this guy touch me, or that my boyfriend also didn't have the right to touch me like that. I was just grateful that that he was willing to forgive me and that he still wanted to be with me. A week later, as we pulled into my driveway, he looked down at the steering wheel and said he had something to tell me. He had cheated on me the same night that I'd been praying that I wasn't going to be raped. My boyfriend had had sex with someone else, and then he'd come home and verbally and emotionally abused me for letting someone else sexually abuse me. I haven't shared my story with many people. Most of my friends haven't heard it. I didn't tell my parents or the rest of my family. Um, People in my community don't know. I'm sure there are many, many people that you know that haven't told you their story either. I think we need to hear more people's stories. After I shared my story, again in more detail with my husband, I really relived it. I went into a panic attack, hiding in the scalding hot shower, crying, shaking uncontrollably until he held me long enough that I could breathe again. And only after he'd acknowledged that what had happened to me was not okay could my body stop shaking. That was the first time that anyone had really acknowledged just how wrong it was and supported me through my pain until I could come out on the other side. What struck me in that moment was the lack of acknowledgement when I first told someone what had happened was far more damaging than the event itself. And I want to repeat that because to me that was really profound. So the lack of acknowledgement was more damaging than the event. What I needed was acknowledgement that what had happened was not okay. I needed to be told, "I'm sorry, that that happened to you, it's not your fault. I've never posted a hashtag #MeToo. In fact, when I see them, I've often thought dismissively, oh, there's another one. I've actually become desensitized by the overwhelming number of them. So I would like to take this opportunity to say to every hashtag #MeToo that I've scrolled past, I'm sorry for not acknowledging you. I'm sorry whatever happened to you shouldn't have, and it was not okay, and it's not your fault. I think we need to acknowledge and validate more people's stories. It was upon reflecting on my shameful indifference to the Me Too movement that I felt compelled to record this video. For me, a hashtag wasn't personal enough, it didn't make it real enough. And while I'm not at all suggesting that all victims relive their trauma by recording a video and posting it out to the world, this did seem like an empowering action that I could take for my own healing journey. And I would hope that I could be a voice of sorts for those who are not able to speak for themselves. I encourage everyone to remember every time they see a hashtag #MeToo that there is a unique story behind that. So I've often wondered how that guy would look back on that night. Did he know how young I was? Did he think I was flirting with him? Did he think my agreeing to go back to his house was actually agreeing to something else? Was he trying to impress me with his photos? Did he think that I had happily gotten undressed? Did he think I'd enjoyed him touching me? Did he really think that he was protecting me when he walked me home? Did he actually believe that we shared some beautiful connection? And if he knew how I had experienced that night, would he in fact be devastated because he isn't really a bad guy and that was not his intention? And this led me to my next insight. So I don't think anybody actually thinks that they're the bad guy, right? It would take a really special person to be able to objectively reflect on their past, ask themselves some really hard questions, and to hold themselves accountable. So I'm not holding my breath for any apologies. I don't need that. But I feel it's time to give notice that I'm done with the burden of sole responsibility for situations where, in hindsight, yes, I could have done something differently, but they could have done something differently too. You see, it's not anyone else's job to work out your intentions. It's your job, your responsibility to get consent. Being drunk is not consent. Being in your house is not consent. Being intimidated is not consent. Being submissive is not consent. And being silent is not consent. So that's it. That's my story, my insights. Again, my name is Angel, and thank you for listening to my Me Too story.